what's up? It's Sapphic. Welcome to my channel where I do art student lifestyle videos. So if you're interested in any of that, head down below and subscribe. I hope you're having an amazing day and let's get into it. So this is the second ever installment in my book review series. The title is still to be determined. So if you guys have suggestions, leave them down below. For now, I've just named it Books in a Beat because it just makes sense. But apart from that, if you have a better title, leave it down below because I am on the hunt for maybe a better title. This is just like a new top that I bought recently. So the look that I'm going to be doing today is going to be very much inspired by the color of this top. Also by a video I saw a couple of days ago. Also by this palette, which I love. It's a beautiful formula. And yeah, so let's get into it. This is the first time I'm actually using this primer, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about a book called The Chosen and the Beautiful. Now this book came out last year and I put it on my TBR after what's her name? The channel name is This Story Ain't Over. I can't remember the creator's name, but she spoke about this book and she was like, oh, it's like a Sapphic version of The Great Gatsby, and that immediately sounded like my cup of tea. And so I was like, yes, I am down for this. I like this. And just find a brush. Yeah, and I want to review this, and so I thought I would, but I never got around to reading it last year. So then this year I'm going on a whole like Sapphic or gay books sort of journey, I guess you could say. And so this is the book that has sort of come up this time that I am reading right now. Yeah, so to preface things, it is a Sapphic retelling of the Great Gatsby. I haven't actually read The Great Gatsby. I have, and it's not like it's a classic, so I'm not gonna read classics type thing. I have read many classics in my life. Black Beauty, The Little Prince. I've read a few. I had a whole phase when I was a teenager where I was reading like a bunch of classics, and you won't believe me, but I actually did also read Shakespeare plays, like the full-length fucking plays, and they weren't for school. Like I just read them because I was interested in reading them. And so I have read classics before, so but I just somehow never got around to The Great Gatsby. I don't know why, it just gave me like strange vibes. But this is a, like I said, Sapphic retelling of The Great Gatsby, told from the perspective of Jordan Baker. I don't know if she was genuinely a character in the original or she wasn't. I think she was. I think she was actually a character. I think she was Daisy's best friend. But I do think also that she didn't have a very huge part to play in the original. And this entire book is told from her perspective. And so, to begin the thing, I loved the concept of taking a old American classic and making it gay. And you know, I didn't actually watch a single review before reading it, watch or read a single review before reading it, but it's written by an Asian author and I was like, yes, I am down for this. I love it. Let's do it. And so here we are. So like I said, I don't know if you guys watched my last book review, which if you didn't, go watch it. I was super proud with how it genuinely turned out. That was the first time a video genuinely took me like ages to edit, which was like new for me. Normally it takes me just like an hour and a half to edit. This one like took me like a good 4 or 5 hours to edit. But yeah, so go watch that video if you haven't. We're gonna start off with the general feelings I had about the book as I read it and finished it. and then we're going to go into the specifics, maybe chapter wise, maybe a little bit more, not exactly chapter wise, like I don't have a note or a few things to say for per chapter, but essentially just chronologically what I thought about the book and the events in the book. Ooh, that would have been bad. So, general thoughts. It's a beautifully written book. I think the author has done an exceedingly good job with the book and the writing of the book. It's very compelling, and you know, there are some parts which are just so genuinely beautifully written. I will get into them when I get to those parts in the chronological bit. I will read them out to you. I bookmarked them on my Kindle just because I was like, this is beautiful description and beautiful writing. So I bookmarked that, and so yeah, it also achieves the purpose of being like this mysterious sort of enigmatic book entity thing, and like very like it felt deadly to be reading that book. And it also kind of achieves this like old Hollywood glamour thing that I was going for, because it is set in the 1920s, and so there's the whole thing of, you know, the parties every day and rich people being rich people, you know, things like that. And you know, like the free-flowing booze and the free-flowing parties, and you know, no one gives a damn about life, I guess. And it's written from the perspective of an upper-class woman, and so obviously that it sort of encapsulates that glamour, that glamorous life that she's living, that devil-may-care, laissez-faire attitude of the way she goes through life. I also love that the sexuality of the characters is something that's just a thing that's there. Like, it's not a main plot point that the character is sapphic. It's not a main plot point that, you know, the male characters are bi. And yeah, essentially it's not like everything is revolving around the fact that this person is not straight, which I love a good gay love story, like I do. And obviously in those situations that the love story is based on the person being gay, and that's what makes it so much cuter. And they're usually teenage love stories, because you're just like, oh, this person's a teenager, they're discovering themselves, and that's why it's so cute, right? But in this, the characters are grown up. Jordan is in her 30s, and that everyone's like, oh, you should get married. She's in that age. Daisy is married in her 30s, and so it just kind of is like, yeah, this is like not a big deal. It is part of who I am, and it always will be. I need to hide it because it's not accepted in society, but at the same time, like, it doesn't really affect my life adversely, essentially. I've not read The Great Gatsby, and I mentioned this at the beginning. It's not a classic book that I did read in my phase of reading the classics, and I thought that this book, at the end of it, I would want to read it, but I don't. The reason is because I don't think the actual main characters of the story, like Gatsby and Daisy, are not compelling characters, so I don't actually want to go back and read about them again. Like, I don't want to read a whole book about them, and so I just don't want to go and read The Great Gatsby, the book. I don't think it's going to be worth it. I don't think it's going to be good for me. And so we shall not be doing that. I genuinely thought I would read it, and this review would include my perspective of what I thought about the actual book. But it won't, because like I said, it just doesn't seem compelling enough. On the other hand, Jordan, the character who's narrating everything, Jordan Baker, is an extremely compelling character. Like, she's so likable, and I don't actually know why. She doesn't do like the best things, but at the same time, she's so like going through life and, you know, just doing her own thing. And I would love to read a book written solely about her. Maybe after the events of this, maybe before the events of this, what led up to this, any of it. I would read a book about her. She's just like a very attractive character, and you know, if a woman like that passed me down the street, I would like stand there and stare at her, because like I said, she moves through life with this like easy grace that people don't possess, and I think that's what's so attractive about her. It also tackles the feeling that Jordan has of almost being lost in life as a Chinese immigrant really well. It almost makes her seem like a second generation Chinese immigrant when she's not. She's a first gen. The family that she's in is American and they adopted her, but at the same time she was adopted super young, and so the only life she's ever known is here. And so it just tackles that crisis really well. Of course, I'm not one to really express that feeling. I don't have that feeling. I'm not an immigrant. I was born in this country. I am Indian. My parents are Indian. My family is Indian. And it's just not a crisis that I deal with. If you guys want a better perspective on that, I would go to a different creator's channel. Amanda Rachel did a segment about it last year or the year before last, when the Asian hate crimes were at an all-time high. She did a whole thing about, she spoke about being a second generation immigrant or a third generation immigrant and how that feels and how she goes through life. She went through life thinking like, I'm Canadian and yet I don't look white, and so that's why people would treat me differently, and that's super like fair. Like, I mean, like I said, I won't ever be able to understand what an immigrant goes through and what their children go through, so I would recommend going to a different creators sort of channel profile to, if they talk about that, to go see what they're saying, why they're saying it, understand that perspective if you want to. Another thing, and I don't know how fans about the original book are gonna feel about this, I really hate Daisy. Daisy's genuinely like the worst fucking character on the planet, and there's something about the way she controls everyone around her and the way she's manipulative to everyone in her life. It's just, I don't know, I just hate it. And I'm just like, why? Why are you doing this to me? Why do I have to sit and, you know, read about you? Like, let me read about Jordan. I don't care about you. Towards the end of the book, there is this idea explored of there are some people who hold an inexplicable power over us. One that they can't explain, that we can't explain. And they have the power and they use it against us unfairly to manipulate us, to get us to do things that we maybe would normally do, to forgive them when they do something bad, to agree with them when we wouldn't normally. It's just a power that some people hold over others. I have had people who've held that power over me. It's not a nice feeling when you sort of come out of it and you realize, like, what the fuck was I doing? Why did I do that? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't align with who I am and my character, but I did it anyway and I cannot explain it. And, you know, sometimes it drives you up the wall, but it is what it is. For example, in the books, and it'll make more sense when I go through it chronologically, but in the book, not books, Daisy holds a power over Jordan and Gatsby, right? And Tom, her husband. But Nick holds a power over Jordan. And, you know, he doesn't wield it unfairly, but it's there. Even though Jordan may not acknowledge it. And it's like, there are parts of the book where she's like, I don't know why I'm behaving like this about him. There's nothing so new about loving someone like him for me that would make me behave this way, but I am jealous of him when I wouldn't normally be, and jealous of his other partners when I wouldn't normally be with any of my other lovers. And yeah, and Gatsby has a power over Nick, and Daisy, like I said, has a power over Jordan, Gatsby, and Tom. Jordan as a character, the author explores this like crippling loneliness that she feels, even though she can have anything in the world. She has all the friends, all the lovers, and all the people bowing down to her charms, but she feels this extreme loneliness. And you as the reader keep thinking like, why? But it kind of makes sense, because even we as people, we can be extremely popular, and I'm sure you've seen this sometime or the other, where people talk about how they were like extremely popular, but they were so lonely. Just like, and there are times that we can't explain it, and it's not really explained in the book either, so it's not like, but it exists and we all know it exists. We all deal with it sometime or the other. And the last thing is, no, this, you know what? This I'm gonna come to at the very end of this review. Okay, so now the non-general bit. This is going through everything chronologically, chapter-wise, whatever. So the book starts extremely abruptly. Like it just straight jumps into the book and you're just like, what the hell is going on? What is happening right now? You as a reader are just thrust directly into the plot. Like at the very beginning, like literally in the first chapter, Jordan's at Daisy's house. She meets Nick. You know, Daisy's like, oh, Jordan, you should get married to Nick. And you as a reader, and you know, Jordan's like, so you're seeing things from Jordan's perspective, her point of view. And she's talking about how Daisy and her husband, Tom, don't get along. And you're suddenly like, excuse me? Where did we come here from? Like, what the fuck is going on? And it just sort of leaves you feeling like, what is happening, you know? Yeah, so it starts exceedingly abruptly, and sometimes in certain books, that is a good thing, where you just jump straight into the plot and it's so fucking interesting and you're just there like, oh my god, wow, right? But in this book, it's just it just sort of leaves you feeling bereft, and it's almost like you're just like in the sea, like you have no control over what's happening and things are just going, you're just supposed to go with the flow, and even though it doesn't make any sense to you, and you're just there like, the fuck is going on? What is happening? Help me out, someone. You know what I mean? It's like you've been teleported somewhere. I've literally written this down in my notes. It's like you've been teleported somewhere, and during the almost end of the conversation, so there's like 1/4 of the conversation left, and you're just there like, what the fuck? Where did I suddenly land? You know what I mean? Then in the literal first and second chapters, there's way too much introduced all at once. Like, I understand that you want to kind of set the scene, and like I said, I don't know how the original book is, so I can't really tell you guys that that's not how it is in the original book, because it might as well be. Like I said, I have no clue. But in the book, there are so many plot lines introduced all at once. It's literally just like Daisy and Tom's awful relationship. The fact that Daisy was drinking demon blood, something called demon egg, is in this story. And that sounds so cool, right? You're just there like, oh my god, that sounds incredible. If you read it in a synopsis, if you're just like in the middle, you're just thrown there and you're just like, oh, there's such a thing as demon blood, and it just exists and someone's drinking it. And it's almost like alcohol, you know, the way it affects the brain. And I'm just like, huh? What? Okay. And, you know, Gatsby is mentioned right at the beginning. Like, literally, I think in chapter 1, Gatsby is just mentioned by someone. I don't remember by whom, but Gatsby is. And you're just there like, okay. We're jumping right in the middle of something, and I don't know what it is. And I don't even know if I want to know what it is. Because like I said, it just gives this really strange feeling of, I don't know what the fuck is going on. And, you know, like I said, sometimes, you know, for example, when you start a book and it's right in the middle of a fight, a character shows up. Let's say I'm writing a book and I say at the very beginning in the first chapter, the main character teleports somewhere, and when they teleport right in the middle of a fight, and whatever, Spider-Man is punching Venom or some shit like that, right? And you're just, that makes sense. It's interesting because you're like, oh, this person is punching this person, I wonder what went wrong. But this is just like a conversation in the middle of a house, and you're just like, okay, what am I supposed to do about it? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I'm making sense, but like, yeah, it's just very abrupt and you're left feeling very lost. The second chapter is actually a time jump back to when Daisy and Jordan were kids, I'm pretty sure. So no, ignore what I say. So there are time jumps in the book going back in time to, there was the first one which went back in time to when Daisy and Jordan were kids, when they met for the first time, when Jordan did something for Daisy. And that's extremely cool because Jordan makes a real life lion appear out of paper. And that seems so cool, right? Like, you're just like, oh, this person can do magic. And then everything just makes a little bit more sense. But then it also is like out of left field because nothing in the previous chapter or then later in the next chapter gives you the hint that the time jump was where it was supposed to go. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, oh, the time jump happened and now we're back to where we were. And yeah, sometimes you need it. You need these time jumps to tell the story of a character. But like I said, this was just very strange. And I guess it was sort of an introduction of the power that Daisy holds over Jordan without really needing to. This was the first time that they met. And like, you can tell that in hindsight after you finish the book. But you can't tell it at the time. And so at the time, it's just like, okay, what the fuck is going on? You know? And you're just like, this makes no sense. Someone get me out of here, you know? And it's just like, no. No. But like, there are 2 time jumps only, or is it 3? It's 2 or 3 time jumps only. And they're just, like I said, very jarring. And the reader is just left feeling like, okay, why was that needed right now? You know? And like I said, in hindsight, now that I've finished the book, it kind of makes sense. You know, that's where it started. But like, at the same time, it could have happened at a slightly later time. Because like, even at the very beginning, like I said, everything was so abrupt. And then again, it's just all like, okay, you were thrust back in time to when Jordan was like 8. Does that make sense in your brain? It doesn't to me. It does not to me. So yeah, then I didn't actually know in what year this was set. I know it was set in like 1923 or 24 now. Like, now I know that. But there is this time jump, I think in chapter 7, where it goes back only like 2 or 3 years. I think it goes back to like 1917 or 1918, when the war is just getting over, World War I. And in that vein, you're just like, because that you don't explicitly know what year it is if you don't pay attention, and it's going back only a little bit in time, it's suddenly just like, what happened? We were just there a second ago, and now where the fuck are we, you know? And you're just there, you're just a bit stuck, like, I don't like this feeling of, I know it doesn't make sense, but I have no other way to like explain it. Like, you're on a boat going on a sea and you don't have oars. Like, that's how it feels. Chapter 8 is a bit strange in the way it's written. In what's going on in chapter 8? I think Gatsby's like first introduced in chapter 8. Like, as a character, he like shows up in chapter 8. And in chapter 8, you're just there like, okay. And why am I supposed to care about this guy? You know, like, I understand the book is named after him, but apart from that, why am I supposed to care about him? And so it's just, there are parts of the chapter where the writing is beautiful and you would just literally keep reading for the writing. But there are other parts where you're just like, okay, this just feels a bit like it's dragging. It just feels a bit unnatural, so on and so forth. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go do my base off camera and be right back. Okay, when I said base, I just literally meant primer and skin tint. So we're gonna go with cream contour now. So yeah, chapter 8 just seems, hold on. Chapter 8 just seems weird. It just leaves you feeling like, what? And then, oh yeah, so not much. So the book is 22 chapters, 21, 22 chapters. And so now we're like halfway through the book, right? And you think that things would happen, but in chapter 9 and 10, literally nothing happens except Gatsby and Daisy sort of get together. Nick is enamored by Gatsby, and Jordan doesn't like Gatsby, which is new. But, you know, she meets him and he doesn't give her the right vibes, which is also why I like her, because I'm that person who very much relies on my intuition and reading of, sort of first reading of the person. If I don't get a good first reading from you, you're just not gonna make it into like my list of friends or just my list of people that I would like to associate with. And yeah, so Jordan does not like Gatsby. She just gets this strange dislike, and maybe it's because both Daisy and Nick are so enamored by him that they just don't see Jordan anymore. Maybe it's just, I mean, the way it's written is literally just written as it's her feeling of him. But I think the thing that I just said also plays a little bit of a part into it, even though it's not really said explicitly in her thoughts. After chapter 10, once we hit like the 50% halfway point with the book, it gets a lot more fast-paced. Things happen. Tom discovers that Gatsby and Daisy are having some sort of affair, and you know, Jordan meets this guy at Gatsby's house who is Chinese or Vietnamese or just Asian, who can do the same kind of magic that she can. And you know, he at first treats her like, but afterwards she's like, no, I'm like a genuinely rich girl who was invited to this party because of my status, and you're wrong about me. And she gets mad at him, but then he invites her somewhere to hang out with him and his friends, and they're like, I'll show you the real magic apart from what you're doing. And it just like, it compels her, and it's nice because she found someone exactly like her and leaves her feeling a little bit less like sort of just going through life without knowing anything. They've also shown that her aunt, they've also progressed the plot of the fact that she can do magic and she can see ghosts and interact with them. And the fact that her aunt is sick and going through something and she doesn't know if her aunt is gonna make it. There's also this added aspect of the Manhattan Pact. I didn't look into whether that was like a real pact that took place in the 1920s, but essentially it was just, in the book it's about banning, the legal context is about banning demons and demonic, but the sorry, that's the official context given, but in general it's just like a racist pact to get rid of the Asians, and that's acknowledged, you know. And everyone tells her, just like, it's not gonna affect you, you're one of us, you're Jordan Baker, nothing can affect you. And yet she just felt like she is left feeling like, what is happening in my life, you know? Which is fair, because even though she has been in the US her entire life and she is technically a US citizen, she looks different. And you know, she's like, people who, just for looking the way that I look, are not going to be allowed in this country anymore, which is ridiculous. And she's right. So she meets this other magician and stuff, and she meets his friends, and you know, they talk about the Manhattan Pact and how they're gonna all go back to China. And they ask her, they're like, do you want to come with us? And it's obviously a very compelling offer for her, because she's like, I never felt like I belonged here anyway. And so she genuinely considers it. And then I just sort of, like I said, the entire book, this is when the book starts moving. And when I say it starts moving, it runs. And so even though you have like 50% of the book left, you're suddenly at the end of the book. And so I didn't take any notes till I hit chapter 19. Should I have gone back and read the book again and made more notes? Probably. But here's the thing. It took me 2 weeks to read this book the first time. I'm not gonna do it again. Hold on, let me just finish this. Yeah, so all of chapter 19 and 20, essentially there's this girl who's murdered and you don't know who it is. And you know, it started off as like just like a really hot day, and Daisy suggests all of them go into town and get a room at the plaza. And there's this huge blowout fight between Gatsby and Tom, and that whole thing happens. And then so there's a girl that dies, and Jordan and Nick and Tom and everybody sees that there is this girl who died, and when they're coming back and they see this and they get really shook by what they see over there and what happened. And so Jordan goes to Daisy's house and she gets in a fight with Daisy. Does she get in a fight with Daisy? Actually, no, not at the time. At the time, everyone's just shaken, and so is she. And she goes to Daisy's house and she finds a bottle of that demon egg thing in Daisy's house that Gatsby had left behind. And she steals that bottle and she just essentially gets high off of it. The 2 chapters, 19 and 20, are essentially a euphemism for drugs. I'm not even gonna lie, that's what it was. And you read the chapter and you're just like, okay, this is what it would feel like to be high. I think like extremely high, like I mean on the hard stuff. And not that I've tried it, but I feel like that's what it would be. And I honestly wonder if the authors tried it so that she could write this in the sense of what she actually did experience, what she felt, which would be super cool, like a very cool tidbit to have from the experience of writing this book just for her as well. But yeah, she gets high. She essentially figures out, she talks to the billboard that saw the murder happen, which genuinely sounds like I'm making that up, but I'm not. That's what happens in the book. She talks to the billboard, she gives her a mouth. Like I said, sounds strange, but it's not. Then that guy, the magic guy who invited her earlier in the book, he meets her, and you know, he takes her somewhere to get sobered up, and then she does, and when she's sober, she's just like, what the fuck, you know? And genuinely, the thing that they've shown in the book, I genuinely thought Jordan would die in that chapter. And I thought she would narrate the rest of the story as a ghost looking onto everything. There's already this established fact of like that ghosts linger on in our world, and you know that Jordan could see the ghost and see the ghosts and talk to them. You know, she had that kind of power as well. But like, no, she's alive. She's very much alive, and she does narrate the rest of the story as herself. Once she comes to, a lot has happened. Gatsby is dead. So is the husband of the girl that was killed, and you know, he went and he murdered Gatsby, and sort of then after that killed himself, probably hoping that he wouldn't get caught. This entire eye is just super patchy and I just hate it, but it is what it is now. No turning back. Yeah, so you know, he's gone and he's killed Gatsby and he's killed himself. And then Jordan goes and she confronts Daisy because Daisy is going abroad with her husband and that whole thing. And something happens and Daisy's like, leave this alone, Jordan. And Jordan's like, I can't. And she's like, you can. And Jordan says, I'm not in love with you, Daisy. You can't control me. Because she's like, this is how Daisy's been controlling the people who love her, Tom and Gatsby. And then Daisy, it's just, there's this simple line of Daisy says, of course you are. And then Jordan realizes, oh, of course I am. I have been in love with Daisy this entire time. And that's why I've been doing these strange things and always been doing these strange things for her and always will do these strange things for her if I stay here. There's a line as Jordan's running away from Daisy's house after this confrontation where she's just like, I realize that if right now Daisy drives down here and confronts me and stops me and apologizes, I'll forgive her. And that's just, I just think that's like a powerful sentiment. And so that's what I was talking about when I said Daisy had such a power over everyone around her. And, you know, she wielded it in a way that just wasn't good. And genuinely from the beginning of the book, Daisy is an extremely unlikable character. Like, she's, like I said, she's not a compelling character. Like, there was another book to be written from her perspective, I wouldn't read it because I don't care. So that was actually pretty much the end of the book. Like, Jordan goes away and she talks to her aunt, and her aunt is like, so she's like, I don't want to run away. And her aunt is like, don't you know, by now we don't run away, we take a vacation, and then if we want to, we come back. If we don't, we don't. And so Jordan sort of takes that to heart, and she decides it's time for new beginnings. But before that, as she's leaving Daisy's house, she runs into Nick, and Nick tells her, oh hey, you left a couple of dresses at my house. She was like soaked through with the water, and she's like, he's like, you're soaked through, do you maybe want to change, whatever. And this is, Gatsby has just died, Nick is just coming back from Gatsby's funeral, and she confronts him. She's like, was he that important? And he's had multiple partners, and she then realizes that he would never love her the way probably she loved him. And she tells him, you were my favorite. And he was like, no, I wasn't. Daisy was your favorite, and Gatsby was mine. And that's not unrequited love, people. And then she realizes that the reason, in the middle when she got like high on demon egg, she saw Nick's grandma, and then she realizes why she saw Nick's Asian grandma. It's because Nick had died, and his grandma had reanimated him with paper as his heart. And it was a strange sort of like feeling as like the reader, where you're just like, you're literally just left feeling like, what the fuck is going on right now? But at the same time, you sort of get it. Not really, but kind of. And so Nick is, essentially what she does is she realizes this, and she takes out his heart and she sees it, and there's this whole metaphor of, I mean, it's a metaphor for us, but in the book it's what's happening, where she sees people's names written on there, including hers. So she realizes that Nick was right, he did love her, but Gatsby's name was the biggest. And so the person that he loved the most though was J. Gatsby. And then she sort of makes him a different heart, one without her name, and she just leaves a little kiss on the heart, and she puts it back in him and reanimates him again. And that kind of, it's almost like that's sort of on Unrequited Love, because whenever Jordan said she did love Nick and he did sort of hold a power over her, which even as a reader you don't really understand in the book. You're just like, why is she doing all these things for Nick? Why is she so understanding of him? It doesn't make any sense, because Jordan is strong and powerful and amazing. So why is she stooping herself so fucking low for a guy? So you're just left feeling like, what's going on? And then it makes more sense. And so at the very end, she takes his car, she drives off with the conviction to go to Shanghai and then maybe discover her past. There's this whole section in the book that I didn't talk about where she thinks that maybe she was actually kidnapped from her parents, which is a bit dramatic. The ending was like stunning, where it gave you this feeling of new beginnings and just amazing character growth, you know. And so that's why I said that like Jordan is like an exceedingly compelling character, and if there was a book just written about her is the main character. Because in this book, even though it was from Jordan's perspective, it was about Daisy, and it made sense because Jordan was in love with Daisy. But at the same time, it sort of leaves you feeling like, why the hell am I reading about Daisy when you're such a more interesting character? I would rather be reading about you. And so my feeling was that if the book had been about Jordan, I would have just been more interested. The last note, this is the note that I was gonna say in the general section, but I said I would say it at the end because it just made more sense at the end. I liked the metaphor of Nick's heart being made out of paper. And the reason I say that is because when something's made out of paper, it's flimsy, right? It wavers left and right. And a lot of people's hearts are that way. They waver left and right. They're not steadfast in their love. But essentially, it's just like, there are just some people like that. So I like that metaphor a lot. But also, the thing about paper is that even though it's flimsy, once something's written on there, it is written on there, right? Unless you go through the whole thing of remaking that paper, which Jordan did, something written on there will stay on there. So the heart that he had Gatsby's name written well before Jordan's name. And even though he knew Gatsby was in love with Daisy and he went through the whole heartbreak of realizing that, Gatsby's name was still written on his heart. And that just, like, the ending I really love. So my sort of final thoughts on the book are, it was, like I said, it was an exceedingly well written book. The writing style was stunning, and for that alone, I would read the author's other books. I think the draggy big bit at the start was mainly because of the fact that it was adapted from The Great Gatsby. Like I said, I haven't read The Great Gatsby, so that's not for sure, but I do have experience reading classics, and I know what they're like. They're just, there's a reason that a lot of people don't read them, and I understand that reason. They're sort of boring at the beginning, and you know, it just leaves you sort of like not interested in finishing the book. I have a lot of friends who have started a classic and then just never finished it because they just didn't like the way it started. Personally, I'm that person who, unless I finish a book, I can't actually move on to another book, and that's why it took me 2 weeks to read this book, and I haven't read anything else. But I will start and finish a book for next week as well, so that I can do another one of these. It's just, if the book is interesting, I can literally, the week before I finished this book, the week before I started this book, I reread. So obviously, like, I've read it before, so I know the story, so it would be less interesting, you would think. But I reread the entire Infernal Devices series in a week. And that's 3 books of the same length as this book, I think. And that just really tells you how disinteresting this book is. Like, I love reading. I genuinely love it. Of course, I love Netflix and so on as well, but like, I genuinely love the act of reading. I love it. I am a reader by nature, and if you cannot compel me as a reader to read this book continuously such that I have to take 2 weeks to read this book, it's like, so yeah, final thoughts on this book. I love Jordan as a character. I hate Daisy as a character. I wish the book was more about Jordan and less about Daisy, but I do like the metaphors, how they were closed out. I don't like the actual setup of the book. I don't think it was good. I just didn't like it. And I don't think a lot of people like it. Like, unless you truly enjoy like a Western classic story. I've never heard someone say, I liked The Great Gatsby. Not ever. Like, I've seen people say I liked A Tale of Two Cities and Jane Austen and Pride and Prejudice, which I have read, by the way. I've forgotten the story, but I have read it. And those are just as much classics as this book. And yet they do something that somehow this book doesn't do. This book is just, what I mean is this story is just not compelling. And that's sad because I would have liked a story about demons and demonic and magic and whatever, as long as it didn't include Daisy and Gatsby. I would have loved this story if it didn't include Daisy and Gatsby. It's that simple. I don't know what to tell you guys. Like, it is what it is. Like, yeah. So yeah, that was me on this book, and this is the finished look. Do you guys like it? Do you guys hate it? I don't know. Let me know down below. If you've read this book, let me know what you thought about it. If you read The Great Gatsby, and I'm completely totally wrong in the opinions that I formed about that classic from this retelling, let me know as well. I would love to know. I read all your comments and I respond to all of them. So like I said, let me know. If you haven't watched my previous this series thing, it was on Heartstopper, the comic books, not the show. And you should go check it out right now because it's good. I was really proud of that video, and yeah, it's good. It's a good video. Go watch it. I'll link it up above, and it's in the playlist as well. And you guys can go watch it if you want to. So that was that. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you liked the makeup look. If you guys did, head down below and subscribe and leave a like on the video. Like I said, let me know what you thought about the book. If you've read it, let me know what you think about The Great Gatsby. If you read it, let me know if this review made sense, like it was coherent. And yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!